And as usual, I'm kind of just my name is Marshall Curry. I'm the program manager at EpicN. Today's October 1st and our October Epic Network call, a time for us to get together, connect with one another. And our theme today is a very important one. We're presenting the results from the Making Membership Epic survey and conversations that Jane and I have been having over the last month and a half or so, trying to get a picture together of what we should do in the next year or so of programming from EpicN to support you and your needs. The agenda document is what I have open. Everyone should be able to access this either in the chat box, in an email, or on the member commons if you're reviewing this after we've recorded it. As we're going through the call today, make sure to keep yourself muted. And when you do begin speaking, because there's a lot of different faces, and some people have Zoom, some people are calling in via phone, make sure to introduce yourself every time by stating your name and potentially your university if you really want to make sure everyone knows who you are. We really appreciate that. Finally, our two other small notes. This call is being recorded, which is unusual for this. Normally we will just be posting the agenda and the notes document to the member commons to our members. But because of the importance of this presentation, we wanted to make sure we actually recorded the presentation. And again, as I mentioned, this document is not just an agenda, it becomes a notes document and kind of a resource space for everyone. So please insert comments and questions as we're going. I know it can be, scary to add text while other people are adding text. So use the comment feature if you want to, or just bump down to the bottom of the document and start adding information there. But with that, I just want to say thank you to everyone who's attending today. And thank you to Jane for again being one of our board members and program leaders who's volunteered her time to kind of steward this effort of helping get programming together. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen because many of you have this document open, and let Jane show you her face and share her welcome note and move us into the content of this meeting.
Thank you, Marshall. As we all know, I'm sure already that being a board member for EpicN is it's a great opportunity, but it's one that comes with a lot of work. And if it were not for Marshall Curry, we would not have all of these great results that we have here today. Marshall puts in an inordinate amount of work, and so I'm always appreciative, and it's always worth thanking Marshall for all the time and effort that he puts in to help us keep this whole thing afloat here. I wanted to welcome you all today. I just want to take a moment of reflection. This time of year is always a time of year for me that causes me to reflect. My tomato plants have given up the ghost. My summer flowers are starting to wane. And I feel like my mood often shifts in the same direction. And, we've got a pandemic and we're facing daily decisions now about during this cooler weather, how we're going to face trying to make sure that we're socially distanced and yet not socially isolated, and how we do that with safety with our loved ones. On top of that, we are faced with wildfires, storms, political unrest, social unrest, rampant racism, need I go on. So I've really been thinking about how to some mornings just how to get out of bed and what that takes. And I put a quote here in the document. It's from Martin Luther King, and I was looking for something that would kind of try to capture a little bit how I'm feeling, and I think this does it really well. We must accept finite disappointment, but we must never lose infinite hope. And it is through gatherings like this of networks of colleagues and friends that this is where I find my hope. It's knowing that I'm sitting here in my spare bedroom doing my work, and you are all sitting in your offices and rooms at home doing the same thing. And it's through this network of connection that I find my hope and I find optimism. I am an extremely pessimistic person by nature, but it is through human connection that I find hope for our future. And I'm grateful to you all for the support that you provide to me and that you also provide to one another and to EpicN as a community. So thanks for being here. And I would say to my Jewish friends who have just observed Yom Kippur, Gemara Hatima Tova. This is truly a time of reflection for all of us in the Jewish community who reflect on the new year and our role within it. And may we just all hope that this time of reflection leads us into a more positive future. And with that, I hopefully not a Debbie Downer moment, but more of an uplifting moment. Let's get into a connection with one another. So I think maybe there's quite a few of us, so perhaps we can use the chat function for this. If you wouldn't mind, we know we can go around quickly and introduce ourselves online, but in the chat function, would you also include some information about what you think is going to be the best time of year for an EPIC conference for you? It would be really helpful to see that. We usually have our EPIC conference in April, and that's a horrible time for me, but anyway, for my program, as we're wrapping up the year. So we would definitely like to get some more input and feedback from you. Again, I'm Jane Rogan. I work for Indiana University, but as Marshall just noted, like maybe we don't want to tell people where. I'm from Incognito University. But yeah, so let's just go around really briefly because I love hearing everybody's voices. So Nancy, I'm going to call on you next because you're in my next box.
Am I the Nancy you're talking about?
Yes, you are the Nancy I'm talking about.
Sorry, I just made a typo. I said Yoon instead of June because I was trying to finish. But hi, everyone. I'm Nancy Hauk from Dixie State University, and I explained the name. It's in the southernmost tip of Utah, and we have a very mild and warm climate here. And about 150 years ago, they gave it the name Dixie because of that. So it's kind of called Utah's Dixie. And I am the associate provost over our community and global academic departments. And I just joined EPIC-N last week and had a wonderful meeting with Marshall, who I find absolutely delightful. He's even visited this city, so he knew a little bit about it. And I did my graduate work in Oregon, so we had a connection. But thank you for all of the resources and for helping me to launch forward in our partnerships with the community. And the last thing you should know is I was born and raised in this community that has been rapidly growing. St. George is the largest percentage growth metropolitan area in the United States right now. And so we're really rapidly growing. So those are some things about me. So thank you for having me here today.
Thanks, Nancy, and welcome. You must be one of our newest members. That's great. Shelley, you want to go next? You're next in my Brady Bunch lineup here.
Yes, I'm Shelley, and I am also new. I come to you from UW-Madison, and I recently joined the team with Gavin Luter. So I am, in the last few weeks, ramping up my understanding of both our own projects and also EPIC-N. So really happy to be here, learning a lot. My brain is getting bigger as we...
Excellent. So who else do we have who is a newcomer, relative newcomer to EPIC-N? So I see Susan's on the line, and Stephen and Christopher, and you guys are all old timers. So anyone feel like they're still a new timer?
I think
yeah, Mary, go right ahead. I think Mary and Michael perhaps.
Yeah, hi everyone. So I'm Mary Nally. I'm the director of the Center for Campus and Community Engagement at Ohio University, which is in southeastern Ohio, the Appalachian, the best part of Ohio. I've been in this role for a little over 2 years, but previously have a background in social services and in nonprofit management. So I've been the community partner with a lot of university collaborations, and now I've switched gears to work on either the good side or the bad side. I can't tell yet. It's just a different side, but really happy to be here. We're a very decentralized university with multiple campuses. So I think it'll be a few years as we build out our capacity to to do kind of anchor institution or EPIC network models, but I love that there's a model out there, and I'm very excited to be here. So thanks.
See, this is the moment of hope we were hoping for right here, right? So I think one of our next newest members is Danielle. I see Danielle is muted, but maybe not got the camera on right now. Danielle, are you there? You want to just give us a little introduction? Nope. Okay. I think everybody else is a relative, veteran of our phone calls and network calls and being in the network. Perhaps Michael Williams is our maybe next newest person. Michael, if you see unfamiliar names on here, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself one more time?
Absolutely, yeah. Michael Williams at Allegheny College, which is in northwestern Pennsylvania, about an hour and a half north of Pittsburgh, 45 minutes south of Erie, Pennsylvania. So I'm the director of a program we have here. It's a community-based research program called the Gateway Network, and glad to be with you all. Thanks, Jane.
No problem. Thanks so much, Michael. Thanks for joining us. All right, so I think in the interest of time, will our veterans all wait? I don't know if you can hear me. There you go. Because I think otherwise we'll be here, just our network call will just be full of us talking about ourselves. So let's, if that's okay, we'll move along. And thanks, Danielle, for your note in chat saying that you're having difficulties with your microphone. Just want to talk a little bit about the survey that we completed. Thank you to all of you who have gone ahead and who went ahead and completed that. But I think it's just important for us to talk about why we felt the need to do this and what we plan to do with these results before we actually get into talking about the survey itself. But we know that there's a lot of great information that EPIC provides to programs. And we know that happens disproportionately at different times, of perhaps maturation of programs. And we want to make sure that we're constantly offering something of value to all programs, no matter whether they are thinking about starting brand new, a couple of years in, or even have been around for multiple years. And so what we wanted to dig into was sort of like, what could those ways of supporting programs really be? What could they look like? And then what is it that program managers really want? I think that there's a lot of tension around how much help EPIC can offer and how much program managers feel like they want to be independent. And so we wanted to sort of try to explore those things as well. Because giving over, let's say, an assessment piece to EPIC and allowing EPIC to guide that assessment process might feel to a program manager like they've somehow given up either autonomy over that structure, or it's going to be too cookie cutter, it's not going to be adaptable enough. And so I think there's a little fear and tension that operates on an individual level in terms of what we all need as program managers, what we get value out of when we do it ourselves, and how we can derive value, continue to derive value from some of the work that EPIC could do for us, whilst also kind of not fearing that somehow we're going to lose insights or control over the process. So and those are really the reasons that I wanted to work with Marshall on getting this survey up and going, because that's a tension I feel for my own program. So, I do sit here with those two hats on, right? I'm trying to make sure that we're getting this network of collaboration built up for EPIC. I want that because I want it for myself, and I think it's really helpful for us, but I want to make sure that it's also appropriate for member programs at all sorts of stages. So what we're taking from these survey results is just kind of your guidance, and we'll have another activity in a little bit here to sort of get some instant feedback from you about what we're looking at here with these survey results. But what we want to make sure that we're doing is that we're taking this information and your comments and really try to build a robust and create a robust and dare I say fun, along with helpful network of collaborators. So that's kind of where we are and what we're doing with all of this. So if you want to take a peek there at the results from the survey, we got about 60 responses, which is a pretty good response rate, I think, just under the 50% mark of member programs. And then I think if you want to just kind of take a peek at the high level summary of the questions that we asked, what do we do? What does an EPIC already do well? And it seems like the things that we would imagine and the things that probably take up most of Marshall's time and most of the time of the person who's helping to coordinate among the network members is technical assistance to network members and also individual support. So whether that's answering specific questions or getting people onboarded, getting things set up at the beginning, but then also continually kind of working with folks through their systems. And then building connections across the networks. Like, oh, you have a question about this, well, let us refer you to Alona because she does a really great job with that and making those connections happen. And I would say that, from my point of view on the board, I think this is what the board feels like the role of the network is. It is to make connections and it is to offer help and support. So it's maybe not too revelatory that those are the things that people are appreciating that we do well, because I do think for the mission of EPIC, those are really the essential component pieces. In terms of what you all said are the most time-consuming parts of your job, communications obviously is number one on there, and I think we talked about this a little bit in the program, in the network call last month. The idea of communications, it's a really tough one because some of that is very individual and it's a lot of time on the phone with partners and faculty, but some of it is also reporting out what you've done and talking about, how do you draw together all of your successes and not just the final reporting, but we all know that there's a difference between a final report you might put out and then the constant churn of communications when you have your provost call and say, give me three great examples of something that's happened in your program this semester. What can you talk about? They're constantly, the outreach and the informational part of our communications. It's constant, right? So that sort of doesn't surprise me. And then, of course, relationship building, because at the core of everything that we're doing with community engaged learning, if the relationships aren't there, then the whole thing is going to fall apart. So, I think that there's some things in there what are the most time-consuming parts, and this is where the tension comes in. There are things in there that are important for program managers to know about and to do, and there are things in there that EPIC can also help with. And I think we're looking to strike a balance between offering enough tools and support so that those things don't necessarily reduce in the things that take the most amount of time, but they certainly are the things about which the program can support, the EPIC network can support individual programs, if that's making any sense. What other ideas do you have for the way that EPIC can support program managers? Trainings and resources on various topics. I think that's a great suggestion. And then being able to understand how you might use those in different contexts. Finding funding was something that was, I guess, in some ways not surprising that it came up, but I think that the number of respondents who were asking the question about funding was quite informative for us. And then again, building relationships and helping find partnerships both locally and abroad was, I think, something that the EPIC network model relies on this notion that we are all going to find a community partner and everything is just going to be happy and fantastic. And I think what we're seeing here is that perhaps we're living in a time where funding is making it hard to find partners. And then partnerships are hard to nurture and develop because of perhaps funding concerns. And so I think this is a really important moment for EPIC as an organization to really consider what it is that we could be doing to better help member programs in those areas, because we know we have member programs right now that are struggling to find and also to fund their ongoing work with community partners. And then I think this last thing, other ideas from other networks, these are just sort of the Marshall went through, was very sweet and wrote up all of these ideas that folks had come up with. So, things that you've seen as good examples of how a network like this might operate, a collaborative network might operate. So what I might suggest that we do here is just take a moment to look through those ideas from other networks, and then using the chat function and or the comment function on the document, if you would prefer, just make a comment on some of those things that you feel really resonate with you, preferably not one that you already put in there, but things that really resonate with you. So let's just take a couple of minutes and look through that ideas from other networks part of this survey responses. And the United Nations United Nations Sustainability Development Goals. That's what UN SDGs is, Travis, Terry. Gosh, UN SDGs. Okay, so, and we have done a project with a student where we have mapped every project that we know has been completed by an EPIC member program. We've mapped it to those very specific United Nations Sustainability Development Goals, which have different numbers and then different subsets. So we can show how EPIC as a network is responding to sustainability development goals. All right, so I'm going to be quiet for a moment. Let's all just read through those and then jot down your thoughts about what do you think are things that are particularly interesting, or maybe something that it's most important for us to focus on right now.
Hey, Laura, thanks for joining us. Oh, she's still getting logged in. Whoops, I got a little ahead of myself.
Are you talking to me, Marshall?
No, oh yeah, you joined late too. Thank you, Laura, for joining us. Everyone, go ahead and keep commenting. I'm just prompting the other Laura once she joins what we're working on, but she's still getting her mic connected.
Yeah, I'm just a fly on the wall, so I'm going to go back to mute.
Thanks, Laura.
I don't know.
See you later.
I thought you were the walrus, Laura.
For those of you, since she's in the room, since she's been brought up, for those of you who don't know Laura Block, she's another one of our board members who's joined Jane on the membership work group this year to just help us put all this together. And she's works for the United States EPA and has been a real advocate for EPIC programs in Region 9, but also across the country for a while now. She's one of the founding, I think, kind of organizational members that helped get the organization up and running, but we're happy to have her to listen in and take your feedback and run with it. So thanks, Laura, for being here. And then Laura Martin, I think you're in the meeting now. I think, maybe not.
Don't see her yet.
It looks like she dropped out. Okay, I got ahead of myself. Everyone keep commenting, just ignore me from now on. Thanks. Travis, thanks for your comment about the star community rating. Is that from The
ASHE.
which star is that? Because stars is with universities normally, or ASHE stars is with universities, and then there's a stars for local government. So I just want to double check which one you're referring to, Travis. Thanks.
Yeah, it's the stars for local government, and so it
Cool.
includes a lot of different metrics across, the different pillars of sustainability, and it's, as the community can earn this certification, but it's not necessary. I mean, you just use it as kind of a discussion to talk about like how can we think about what types of projects might be best for the community.
Michael just put a message in chat around faculty cohorts. And in fact, we're going to be talking about cohorts for in our next segment in this sort of summary about what we're going to be doing. Community of practice cohorts, which might include faculty and also program managers and essentially even community partners. So thanks for adding to that list. All right, so Marshall and I are going to take all of the comments. He's going to make sure that he's recorded the comments that are both in the document and then again in the chat box, and take your suggestions and keep adding to this document. And again, you're all very welcome. It's where you welcome you to add, as many of you have been doing, your ideas to this document, because this is going to help us. And to keep really understanding better and better what it is that this network needs to really succeed moving forward. Let's see here. So based on what you've seen here and your comments that you've included, the next activity is that we ask you to think of at least one thing that EPICAN could do or should do or change based on the survey results that we've put out here. Marshall, would you want these as a round robin, or would you prefer these to be in chat form? For those listening or watching later, it might be more interesting to have them in the round robin format.
Sounds good.
Okay, well, let's do that. So, given what you've been thinking about here and the ways in which program managers are talking about their work, could you think of one or two things that the network could change or should do, maybe more of, based on the survey results and the input we just got from one another? Don't be shy about jumping in.
Hello, Jane. This is Sam from
Hey, Sam.
Tech. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm well. And I just want to make sure I have clarity. In this section, ideas from other networks, are we commenting on those and the other comments, or a different section?
In the
Results from the survey, kind of.
Oh, okay. Oh, where we had the ideas from other networks, that you mean? What I'm asking for right now is just globally, what do you think this network could do?
Okay.
What are the things that you would recommend we change or do differently or continue to do based on all of the survey results that we've seen so far? Does that help you, Sam?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Did you want that in the chat, or?
I think we're going to take it as a round robin. So Megan, if if there's something you want to put out there, Marshall's at the ready. I see his cursor in the notes section, ready to take notes. So I think it'll be more compelling for folks who watch this, who were present today, to actually hear people talk rather than watch us type.
Okay, then I'm moving from room to room. That's a perk, right?
That's a big perk. That's great. And then when you get to see your dog too, when you get your video on hold.
Yeah, it's my best look. I would say I always am interested and harping on and focused on the funding component. That's my biggest challenge year to year. So I'm consistent in that need and interest related to EPIC-N.
So do you want to say more, what do you specifically mean? Like, how do you get programmatic funding? Are you getting funding for specific projects? Like, what is it that you're looking for funding for, or what is it you're looking for assistance with funding?
The University of Oregon is completely partner funded. So we're not receiving any university, provost or research, et cetera, funding. So my salary is dependent, and the rest of the program finances are totally reliant on a partner. So, I mean, that's the short version. And that's part of the reason that we typically charge a higher dollar amount than some of the other programs. So it's, you asked a pretty detailed question, Jane, so I'm not sure if you need any more than like, well, I need lots of money to do my job.
No, I wanted to clarify what you meant around funding, because I think there are many pieces of our work that can be funded in different ways, but you're talking fundamentally.
Yeah, I like it, yes.
Sorry.
Mentally.
Like, how do you operate? How do you get even just operational funds to do your work, because you don't get any base funding from the university? Gotcha. Perfect. Thank you, Megan.
I'll second that as an important function that EPIC-N can help out with. As a program that actually, it's been around for a long time, but in the last year has lost that central support. So now we're funded by community partners. I'm interested in, I think there are opportunities for funding that isn't necessarily like our partners cutting a check to our program, and I'm interested in learning more about those things, whether they're through foundation, grants, or how to do private fundraising well. I'm also interested in putting together a resource for our prospective communities to understand that there are multiple models for the way that they can fund a partnership, whether it's that there's an organization that does like a match for smaller, like units, nonprofits, whatever in the community. So it's like there's some more cost sharing that happens. So I actually just want to, it's something that we're working on, and you saw an email from me recently that was about helping contribute this information to the network. And that's what it's driven by, is that I want to put together a resource kind of guide, I suppose, for our prospective partners. So it doesn't sound like the city, right, has to like figure out how to pay for a partnership or something like that.
Thanks, Travis. Appreciate it. Yeah, and I think it's something that, the network as a whole, the organization is really thinking about, in terms of what's our central mission here, is our mission to make as much of this work happen as possible around the globe? And if so, how can we maybe assist with that more centrally? And so I think all of these conversations and comments are happening at a time when the board is also thinking about the same kinds of things. So yeah, I really appreciate these comments. Anyone else got something they'd like to share related to funding, or maybe on a different note?
So I can add another one. I think I should visit the website more often, but member resources, around best practices. When I go through the member resources page, I actually come across something and I'm like, yes, I gotta do that as well. And so I think that a core function of EPIC-N, is just to be a clearinghouse for that information. And so I think it's done really well. But it's hard to find the time to devote just to thinking about program development and doing all that research. And then, I got really excited talking to Marshall because I also had a call with him recently, learning about how EpicN can develop, is thinking about developing some tools to help with almost just kind of like a project tracking automation tool that can be available to people, or at least can be a model for how other programs can put something like that together.
Thanks, Travis. I hear you on the time thing too. I think I really struggle with that in this particular role, of wanting to make a vibrant network of collaboration, but also recognizing that people have so little time to share and to give, and wanting to make sure that when we are spending time together, that everybody's getting something out of this. And I share too, I don't spend nearly enough time trolling through what's available on the website, and very much rely on Marshall, for example, or other program managers to point me in the direction of things that would be of assistance to me. I think also perhaps one of the things that would be really beneficial for us to think about is that timeline for the program and the maturation. And when you first start out, you have nothing, and you have to build the entire house, right? And you just want to get a roof on it before it starts to rain. And then it's not until 2, 3, 4 years down the road you start thinking about, well, this couch isn't comfortable, and maybe I should put up drapes at the windows to not scare the neighbors. And we all come to those things at different times. But again, it's about trying to make sure that we've created an environment in which we all understand that we can and we will keep building out our programs, and it's incremental and it takes time, but the resources are there for us, when the time is right, to sort of dip into them. And so I think some of the things that Marshall and I are going to talk about a little bit later are going to be really helpful in understanding that. I have a desire to network and communicate across this group, and to make sure that I feel like I'm keeping fresh and current. But I also know that that's a time commitment that means I'm not doing some other thing, right? And particularly early on in the growth of my program, I didn't really feel like, oh yeah, I have plenty of time to just sit and think about the shiny hardware I might use in my house. But no, I mean, you're sort of in triage mode. And I do think that the pandemic has put many of us back into that sort of more, responsive mode, rather than sort of just kind of plodding along. So yeah, anyway, just a thought from me. But let's get some more ideas out there. So, what comes to mind for you for these survey results, or things that you could do different, better, or not at all?
I have something similar in reference to the, what is it called? Inside.
This is Sam, for those of us who
sorry.
are calling in, this is Sam. Right?
I'm sorry, I just started.
That's okay, Sam.
Yes, I'm Sam from Texas Tech again. I wish there was a way that we could communicate expeditiously with each other, especially when we have like a question that is beyond the forums. Because you can go behind and you can get a lot of great information, but if there is a specific question and you're pretty certain that this person or that person might have the answer, where you could reach out and get that answer. And especially for those of us that are building out our programs, 1, 2, even if you have a program, but you're branching out in a different area that you've never done before. It's great to hear ideas on what worked, what didn't work, some of the traps to look out for. Marshall's going to mess around and have a huge head by the time this is over. I think the world of him, because he's done great trying to field a lot of those questions, but there may be people on the call or in the network that could answer it better than Marshall could.
Yeah. Sam, I think it's a really great point. I think the notion of communication came up right in the survey. It's the thing we spend the most time doing. And I think we're often in search of information, and I would wonder how we could make that available. It would be probably as easy as a listserv that you could just dump a question into and see who responds via email. It also could be handled on like a Slack forum or something like that. I don't know how you will feel about those, but I feel like I have so many different accounts on so many different platforms right now that I'm like, I don't even remember my passwords half the time. But yeah, I agree. I would love to see us be able to communicate together more expediently, as Sam said, and without necessarily having to run everything through Marshall. There are plenty of opportunities for us to run things to Marshall if we can't find the answers, because he might be able to connect us to folks who are maybe not answering our network calls or just too busy at the moment. But yeah, I agree. But I want to know, is that something that's commonly held within this group, the idea of being able to more quickly and more readily communicate with one another, just by show of hands? Is that something that you would want to do? We're completely ignoring those on the phone who may just be giving us the big thumbs down right now, but oh, thank you, Sam. I'm giving you applause. That's good. Great. Okay, well, it seems like, thank you, Shelley. It seems like the majority of folks would be in favor of that. So Marshall, let's put that down on in the notes here as something that maybe that's one thing we could do for ourselves. If you haven't already, you probably have already put it down in triplicate.
Sounds good.
This is Sam again. I have a question about the forums, and I'm not sure who answers this, but let's say, and I'm on that screen. Let's say there is a question and someone, or a topic that someone puts in engaging community partners, but it also spills over into development or something else. Is it in multiple spots, or is it just in the one?
I'm going to ask Marshall to answer that.
Yeah, this is Marshall. So as you're entering it, you have the option to add tags, and you can use the tags in a filter system or a search system that we could employ in the forums really easily. I think there's a search system already, but they would not be cross-bucketed. The way I think of each of those sections is that they're buckets, and it would not go into different buckets. You'd have to put multiple posts in the different buckets. But if you use the tags, it's easy to search. So the long story short is, we can adjust organization however we need. What's important is we have a space everyone goes to and uses. Right. That's the important thing. And right now, the listserv is probably a better use for your use case. We do have it. I just put the information for that listserv in the notes and in the chat. And eventually, we'll probably want to go to just one, either the forums or a listserv rather than two. But because the forums were brand new and the listserv was very much utilized, or not very much, but it was utilized, we are in the middle of kind of having a two-system approach that you're highlighting, Sam. And my thinking is, if you have posts is that the more everyone can start using the forums, the better those forums will get. But if you just have a question to get to everyone, use the listserv for the time being, and then we'll kind of get to a point where we need to move into one system. But I think that one system for today is the listserv that we do have, and it's called Epic End List. And if you don't have access to it, let me know. But we can also make it better. So happy to take in this feedback from Sam.
This is great. This is so helpful. I think it's really hard when you're trying to restructure and reorganize a little bit. I certainly don't want to make what I think is the right thing to be like what we do. I want to make sure that we're serving all of our members in a way that helps everybody achieve their goals. So it's really helpful to hear your direct feedback on all of this stuff. Well, let's just do one more round. Is there anything else anybody wants to add in terms of what you've learned from the survey results, or from your own experiences and what you feel like you need from Epic End that we could possibly try to get for you? I mean, $1 million for everybody, of course. We'll start with that. Don't you love awkward Zoom silences? I don't know, I just feel like I should just stare directly into the camera. All right, so I'm not seeing any more responses from folks, so let's move on. I don't think I can hold my face straight in the camera and do an awkward Zoom silence for much longer. So I just wanted to share with you a little bit about what we're going to do moving forward with what you've told us here today, but also what we've already learned from the survey responses. And then, as Marshall said, reaching out to program managers and having those conversations and really just trying to get a sense of what's going on. We're recognizing this need, as I mentioned earlier, to make sure that we've differentiated the services that we're providing for sort of 3 different types of maturation of programs. We've got our folks who are sort of in that startup mode and haven't quite yet started their programs and are really just trying to build everything up. We've also got our new programs. I consider those to sort of be maybe 1 to 3 years in, and that varies for everybody depending on like how they build the program out and how they're going to be expanding their program. And then folks who are being the more sort of mature program phase, and so folks who've been sort of around for 3+ years. And that's where we see these differentiated needs for different kinds of information and different kinds of services. So we're starting to pull together ideas for how we might move this kind of work forward. And so Marshall's been working really hard behind the scenes to get a lot of this information available into video format. So if you are a brand new program and you're starting up, and we would have a training video and you could watch, and there would be a training video on EPIC-N. So, I mean, we've all seen the What is EPIC-N video, and it's great. But I remember when I was starting out, looking at the EPIC-N video, I'm like, how am I ever going to get there? Okay, I get it, but how do I get there? And so even breaking down like what is EPIC-N, it's like, what does EPIC-N look like if you're running a program? Like, what have you got to do? Really breaking down those kinds of things. So for new programs, we have a lot of those resources. We also want to make sure that we're getting plenty of information and experience available to our more mature programs as well. And so what we're really trying to focus on is having about 60% of the material that we have available for members be for our more seasoned programs, and about 40% to be focused on our newer programs. We know that our newer programs are heavier users of our information because you need it all at once, right? You need all that information to get started right at the beginning. And then our more seasoned programs, once they've done that, then they're kind of like thinking about, you know, the carpets and, you know, the furniture in their houses and do they put drapes up the windows? And so they're coming back to us for information, but they're coming back without that same sense of pressure and urgency that our newer programs have, which I think is fine, but we also need to make sure that we're providing value to every one of our member programs at every stage of their maturity. So these training videos are going to get started, and Marshall's doing a lot of that work right now. So they're very simple, short, and he's putting them up online as sort of courses, and so you can go through the different courses, just as you know we've all seen in a variety of different environments. But then what we're wanting to do is to start getting other folks to help us with those. So it's not just Marshall as the talking head for EPIC-N, but really to get other input from folks and to broaden those kinds of training modules. So as you think about things that you have had to come to EPIC-N and ask for, and that maybe Marshall walked you through, but would have been helpful if Marshall could have just said, oh, yeah, that's a common question. Here's a really good resource that you can watch, and then watch that video. You might have the answer, and you might be willing to make one of those training modules to guide people through. I know Stephen's done a lot of this kind of work at ASU in his role. He's done lots of online content. So I think we have great resources within our group. So yeah, I think getting that sort of put together would be helpful. And I think it's something that we want to hear, the diversity of stories, right? We want to hear from the folks who have a funding model that's different than everybody else's. And we want to hear from the folks who, like me, I don't work with governments, right? I don't work with municipalities. We're a rogue EPIC unit. So I want to make sure that we're telling those stories. And the next thing that we recognize is that the network call is great, but it's very general. And we know that there's an interest that folks have into digging deeper into specific issues. So what we're looking at thinking about is creating community of practice cohorts, and you could be in as many of these cohorts as you feel like you have time to be in. Those community practice cohorts will dig deeper into specific issues. And then from that, we might be able to develop out, it's from those communities of practice that we feel that we'd be able to develop out those best practices. And then again, more modules around those specific areas. So examples for those might include how to build robust relationships with partners. So folks are interested in that. There are a lot of folks who are interested in the difference between community engaged learning and service learning and where are the boundaries between those. Great. If you want to start a community cohort on that, let's get a cohort going. How do we get our faculty onboarded? How do we do cultural competency work with our faculty and our students? There's great opportunities to do cohorts around those types of topics. So we would welcome in the next iteration of this conversation, we'll probably present a whole bunch of different options and then also poll you all for different things we haven't thought about. And really starting to think through how we build out those different cohorts as we move forward, because it's in those interest groups where this is where we can really tap into the breadth of EPICAN and allow people to sort of take their conversations in different ways. And so I would encourage us to think really broadly, but also deeply about what are the most meaningful ones that we might want to start with first. And then I think there are sort of some timely and pressing issues that I think that we might want to make sure that we're allowing time for. So whether we call this some kind of a community of practice, or we think about this as being a broad EPIC-N response to the situations and times we find ourselves in, issues like how to respond during the pandemic and how to maintain community relations, and when you maybe can't send your students into community, how do we talk about that? And then how do we also talk about the movement for Black Lives and really positioning that social justice work right at the forefront of everything that we do? And how do we as a network choose, as program managers, how can we choose to do that and to influence and be influencers in those decisions? And so I think perhaps those kinds of very timely things might not call themselves a community of practice, but they may be something that we have a group of subgroup of folks from the broader network who might want to be interested in participating in those. So that's really how we sort of see ourselves moving forward. And I think one of the things that's central to our ability to do this and to be successful is that we have to have folks within this community of practitioners step up and volunteer to take on a little bit of this work, to lead a community of practice, to co-lead a community of practice if you don't feel comfortable being the person who's nominally in charge of something. I don't ever really like thinking of myself as being in charge of anything. But I think it would be a really great opportunity for us to allow more voices to come to the table. So having said all of that, I would love for folks just to chime in with some thoughts on what we're proposing.
As people are thinking and getting their thoughts together, I just want to introduce Laura Martin's on the line, listening in from Mississippi, and Julio DeMarco from Brazil has joined us as well. We're just going through a presentation of the kind of a draft plan Jane and I and a few others have worked on to get ready based on the results from the network assessment. Thank you both for participating in that, and everybody else. We're now thinking about what are your thoughts on this proposal that we have in front of you. And Laura, I know you're on the phone, but Julio, I'll put the link to the agenda in the chat box in Zoom, so you can open it up and see the written out version of the plan. Thanks, everybody.
So I really appreciate it. This is Travis from Iowa, and it seems like you know, like what the network is thinking is aligns so much with the things that we're doing for some reason, you know. So I like this idea of modules. I think about it a little bit differently though, because I think mostly about like, what are the types of resources to provide students so that we can remove some of the mystery around what engaged learning is all about, or what community engagement work is all about, and to not withhold information that we know exists, right? So an example of stuff like this is that sometimes we are working with students and it's several weeks into a project and we realize that they haven't found the data sources that best apply to the work that they're doing. So we're putting together a lot of resource guides and modules that are about student resources, probably more than like program manager resources. So I like the idea of doing all of those things. And I would say maybe consider like these things that are geared just for students might be helpful as well. Another one would be, so another module kind of idea that we have is, we do a lot of planning projects are kind of like the cornerstone of our partnerships because they're so immersed in the communities, and we don't want to spend a lot of time on kind of the things that should be done relatively quickly so that we can actually talk about objectives and strategies and meaningful change. And so we have a module about just like, what does a community profile look like, and where do you find the data for that? And so that it isn't like out of 32 weeks, like 4 of the weeks just trying to figure that out, right? Like we can help them understand that quickly so that it's useful and we can talk about it, but it isn't consuming a large chunk of the time that we have working together.
Thanks, Travis. Appreciate it. Stephen, are you up?
Yeah, so I'll second that it would be nice to provide some content for students, or generally speaking, kind of training content for some of the faculty and faculty partners, students, some of the external folks that aren't us. Even like, I don't know if anyone else has student workers, but training them is an amount of work. But at the same time, I guess as far as like the amount of attention that this organization can put towards it, I wonder kind of what our best use of that time is.
Steve, you went on mute right in the middle there. Can you unmute and go back a second? Sorry.
Of course I did. Yeah, I guess all I was saying was there's a lot of directions that this can go, right? And I think it would be really valuable to begin kind of providing some additional resources for some of the folks that aren't us here in this room. But also I'd want to be cognizant that it is the best use of like Marshall's time. And yeah. I guess I wonder if a lot of that content exists out there and we can like use a space in the forum to share external resources with each other, because sometimes I feel like that's almost even, more. Sometimes I like to get like a framework that is kind of like rough, and then I'm going to customize it to use it the way I want, right? And like, Marshall puts time into things like the surveys and stuff. He puts time into that, and I'm still going to customize that and kind of make it for my team. So I think like with some of the content, it's nice to get kind of a foundation and a place to start. I'm throwing a few thoughts together here. One, that like some of the external resources, I would love if we can find those and share them with each other. Like I know I come across periodically we have training content for our students, and I don't really share it out, but I'm rambling. That's just my 2 cents, being efficient use of everyone's time and still finding new ways to do it and cater to groups.
Stephen, this is Mary Nally at Ohio University. What you just said resonates with me, and I feel like this summer and this semester have been the first time when I've actually started compiling what is my game plan for orienting students that are going to work in our office. And I happen to co-teach a class on the ethics of community engagement. And so I've actually pulled, there's a single book, The Student Companion to Community Engaged Learning. It's a very quick read. There's only 4 chapters, and I have developed written reflection prompts for each of those chapters, and have literally I have a digital version of this, since we're all virtual at the moment, that I send to the students, and send them the templates for those reflections, and then just have them do that as part of their orientation. However, and this goes over kind of like the basic ethics, looking at community engagement from the community's perspective, as well as the university's perspective, dispositions. And so it has done a really good job, I think, in preparing students. That said, it doesn't necessarily, I think, connect to bigger picture structural visions that that the EPIC network has, but it could be a good starting point.
Yeah, if I can jump in here to piggyback on the last 2 comments. I almost jumped in before Mary, but I'm glad now that I did not. I think that the student component initially should be a grassroots effort. I agree with the comment that Stephen made. I honestly don't know how Marshall could squeeze any more time in. I think if it's a grassroots effort that we could make the case that he could create the electronic venue for the clearinghouse of such information, and we could possibly get together some folks that could, just take a look at it, make sure the content is something that we want to actually display on our website. I mean, not that we don't trust anybody out there, but, I think the organization as a whole would be irresponsible not to. And then when and if the student component of what's happening in EPIC programs is at the point where I think the organization should do something more, then I think we should. We have efforts like that's happening right now with cities, right? We know those are our partners in most cases, and then we have counties, and so there's effort at the EPIC level trying to make space for them, and I think, and students are a real important component. I'm not saying they're not, but from my standpoint, they're more of a component of the fact that they're the component that's doing the work in these existing courses where we're putting the projects, than and I like good help like everybody else, but then to know what the students that are in my office that are doing and how they do it, and that type of best practices, I think should be a grassroots effort. And I think what I'm hearing from Mary, and I would love to see what others have that are going on, and then we get a chance to vet that material as we post it in a clearinghouse space for that kind of material.
Yeah, if I can add a thought onto that too, kind of what we were talking earlier about catering to the different types of programs or the different stages that we're in. I have some student groups that have no clue what they're doing, right? And could use really anything I can throw at them. But then there are other groups where oh yeah, sorry, this is Steve at ASU. There are other groups that you know, the faculty would frankly get territorial and offended if I started introducing content into their class. Like, they have enough of an issue with me putting a welcome packet in their team drive, you know? So it would be nice though, if like, as we build out that, the forums, and maybe like having a dedicated space to this where we can post up useful content for different types of purposes, something that's, you know, if I have that student group that just has no idea what they're doing right now and is not understanding project scope, if I can just like send them an article about project scoping and like making sure that your goals are realistic, you know, that would be really helpful.
These are great comments. This is what I want, people. I would like to just make a suggestion that this issue for what do we do with students, what do we do for students, how do we prepare students, how do we respond to students, train them on the way, do cultural competency work. There's a whole community practice right there ready for us to take on. And one of the other things that's come up for me is that, you know, Mary, I had no idea that you taught a class in the ethics of community engagement. We have rich, deep pockets of information and knowledge shared among this group and among this member network. And I think it would be a really great idea for us to try to collect some of those areas of expertise. Not that every time anybody has an ethical quandary that they're going to call Mary and say, Mary, what do I do? But if you are trying to deepen perhaps a module that we're working on around engaging students and how do we get them to be better prepared to go into communities, calling on our resident experts to vet perhaps some of the content in our modules, and even if they're not necessarily in that particular cohort, would be incredibly valuable. And I think we know from experience of some of our more veteran members, you know, I certainly know if I was going to have a tricky situation working with community partners where there was going to be tension, I would call Jamie Masterson down in Texas A&M and say, walk me through how to do this, right? Because I know that's something that she's developed a lot of expertise in. So perhaps creating even for ourselves a better sense of the expertise of our members might help us over time to kind of really deepen and strengthen those ties. So I'm seeing nodding heads, which means that at least my words are coming out in the right order. It's like 3:41 and it's never really, I mean, I've had too much caffeine and God knows what's coming out of my mouth right now. So we have what, 20 minutes, 15 minutes remaining. Does anybody else have any burning stuff they need to get off their chests before we move on with the final parts of the agenda?
That's a lot of pressure, but I don't know if it's, I can
take it, Michael, come on.
Dana, I love what Mary said, what you're pointing out there, this kind of, you know, what experts exist, not only amongst those sitting in this room and like program directors, but also amongst like our faculty or staff members or whatever. But I'm just wondering if there might be a survey that would be sent out to us all as program directors to say, what are your, you know, do you have a really specific interest that you wouldn't mind hosting a small, like a set of conversations around, like ethics of community engagement, you know, community engaged learning, for example, using Mary's example, that I'm not a big listserv person. I get overwhelmed by emails. And so for me, if I can look at like a set of programs that are offered or that I don't want Marshall to do more, but I think we could each offer like, say, mini courses, mini sessions, and we might have faculty that would be willing to offer a particular really specific topic. And then faculty at our program schools could sign up for these, and everything. The gift of the pandemic is that we've all learned to connect in some new ways. So anyway, those are just a couple of my thoughts that it's basically repeating what other people have said, but just a little more broad, I guess.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I think it goes really along. I mean, everybody's comments are fitting, I think, so much into alignment with what Marshall and I have been working towards and what the board has been thinking about. And I think, you know, we've sort of been striving to alternate general program calls, this network call, having just a general one and then also having very specific topically oriented ones. And rather than it be Marshall or myself or one volunteer who says, oh, let's tackle this topic, if we could have 3 or 4 people who all club together and figure out over the course of a month, yeah, this is what we're going to present on, this is how we're going to do it, these are the areas of expertise, and then let's make a topically oriented network call. I think there's going to be a lot of strength and power that comes from those, and we'll get better at them over time. But in preparing for those, we've also then revealed whether that's sort of native expertise within our own group or connections out to our faculty and community partners. And we can certainly list all of those resources. It was interesting to watch the number of people when Mary held up her book immediately go, I want that, right? So I do think that there's probably a common desire that we all have to make sure that we are all tapped into all kinds of different resources. So sharing of those common resources would also, I think, be really, really helpful. But yeah, this whole idea of thematic blending and certification is something that we're really trying to focus on within the network, and it seems like something that is going to it's sitting well with all of you right now as a concept and a construct. So that's positive for us as we move forward. Marshall, do you have anything to add at this moment as we move through towards the end of our agenda? Because I know you've been furiously typing, you and Anonymous Otter over there at ASU, I think, have been taking excellent notes, and so I appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks to Steve for helping with the notes and anyone else who jumped in, especially at the beginning there. I was flying around, so thank you to you 2 or 3 or however many people, and thanks for all the great comments in the chat. I think obviously over the years, this is something that we continually want to get feedback on and have gotten feedback on and will want to get feedback on. So just be open and email us or call me, set up a meeting, and I'll try to take good notes and be transparent back through the board and through the membership and potentially just across the listserv for the time being, and try and build these things out. I think, so thank you for that, and thank you for your willingness to continue engage. I think what I'm really seeing is the desired programming or work for me is to scaffold out how does the Epic Network membership easily set up a community of practice, whatever the topic is, and how do I use my time? Like I think Steve set this up really well. How does Marshall use his time? How do I use my time to set up the forum, the application, the sign up, the notes space, and make it extremely easy for those co-leaders to get in, get set up, joined by the people who want to join them, and then move in the direction they want to move, and potentially share back with the network what they discover. And so I think that's kind of what I'm taking away. If I'm getting that wrong, or if you have thoughts on that, please email or chat me. But the one thing I want to note, the final thing I'll note is is that this call could get lost in the shuffle. Like this space for the network could get lost in the shuffle, and I'm not gonna let that happen, because this becomes a really good space to connect and share what happens in those other groups. And so it won't be relevant always for everybody to attend the general let's talk as a network call on a monthly basis, but I really want to echo the sentiment that building relationship in general is a community of practice, and we want to keep that space up. And so this will kind of continue to take shape. It might be themed roughly like we've done in the past, I think, but it's not going to be taken over, I think, by one of these other groups. Or I would suggest you don't let the other groups kind of take over the focus, but definitely get the majority of the focus the next couple of years. Is that it? Do you want to move into the updates? Or is that?
I want to thank you for that nice reminder at the end that this network, above all, is a supportive network. And while we all have particular interests that we want to pursue within it, that the sort of general feeling of support that we get from one another, knowing that in a lonely, cold world, we are for those of you whose world is on fire, it doesn't feel so cold, that we're all out there together doing this work, connected to one another. And I think that's a really important thing for us to remember. And yes, I would love for you to then give us now the updates on what's coming up for EPICN in the next month or so.
Okay, so back into the notes document. The first thing is that's like we've given a couple asks for just general feedback at any point, right? But a very specific ask for today is Jane has now been associated with 3 of these calls in a row, and we like to rotate it. So in general, if you're interested in just kind of facilitating a conversation and helping build connection across the network, I'm looking for folks who are willing to step in as facilitator over the next year or so of this type of call. Not so much a heavy presentation update, but more of a round robin, get to know one another, maybe get a quick update from EPICN. So I'm going to take a minute.
And for those of you who might be feeling like this is a great amount of time and preparation, it's really not. It's a very simple process. Marshall has a template for everything. It's really easy to follow along what he wants, what he's put together. I'd encourage you to do it. It's a great way to. I'm almost like I'm going to say this and I want to stop myself, but I'm going to say it anyway. And I have a hard time focusing for an hour and a half on a call. When you run the call, you focus for an hour and a half. So if any of you have short-term problems of attention, this is a great way to overcome those by making yourself be responsible for looking at 7 things at once. But I didn't mean to scare anybody away with that. I would.
I'm also hoping a couple of folks who have done it in the past step up and do it again some point this year. So please chat it in the Zoom chat or email me your interests. And the requirements are pretty easy. I'd like you to try and do 2 of them in a row. You don't have to, but that's what I'm hoping to be the requirement. You get to choose the theme topics, and you really get to help set the agenda as much as you want. And then you'll facilitate the discussion during the event. I'll do the intro, the outro, and help with all the technology. So you really just come in, get to meet with people and have them talk about what you want and build community. And yeah, so if you're interested to do that, EPICN update, we announced a request for proposal open to anyone in the network, any of your contacts, any private or nonprofit marketing firm. We're looking for proposals to help run the EPICN communications and marketing. You'll notice that since the end of the webinar series, our social media game has gone to next to nothing. And that's because I'm spending a lot of time in other places, and we are trying to bring somebody on to take that work on. There's a budget line item that's available. So if your programs have a good social media team or communications office and you're looking to bring some more work that way, this might be a good opportunity for you actually to consider, because we're really looking to try and keep things in the network.
Marshall, this is Megan with the U of O, Oregon. What about student run marketing entities?
Have them apply. Yeah, have them apply.
Okay.
Or have them look at it and submit proposals. I'm sorry, it's not an application. Have them submit a proposal by all means. We're really open, I think. The board will be reviewing the information, and I'm going to be kind of just facilitating the submission process. So if someone has questions, just let me know. Yeah. So upcoming, go ahead.
In the interest of being a little obnoxious, would you mind sending the RFP again?
Yeah, let me just,
or
I
will put it in an email to you. Yes.
Okay, thanks.
It is, for those of you who didn't notice, it is in the document that we're looking at today, announcing RFP. If you click on it, there's a link to that document that you want to be able to open.
It's also on the front page of our website. I just realized it's like
good.
the first hero image.
Oh, even I could do that, so no need to send that on. I just had visions of going through my email, you know, the 48 that we've had since it all started.
I'm always happy to help, and I know you all are focused on so many things right now because of the start of school year amidst COVID and fires in a lot of cases. And so much other stuff. So happy to always resend emails. That's part of my job. Connect you to resources, right? Connect you to information. So always happy to do that for the newcomers. Please feel free to email me.
And breaking news, Stephen Russell has agreed to be a facilitator for at least 1, maybe 2 meetings. So thank you for helping us out with that.
Some upcoming events from EPIC-N, next section of the notes document. The next EPIC Africa call is this Monday. Feel free to join if you'd like. It's generally for the EPIC Africa programs to do a similar connection because they're a full continent. We expect it to grow, but it's still kind of small. So if you want to attend and participate, feel free. We'll be unveiling their new website, which is going to be great. And it looks very similar to our website. It's just EPIC Africa branded, and we'll feature more of their stories up front. October 7th is a presentation put on by Susan Gallagher, who's been on the call, I think, listening in for some of this. And the presentation will be highlighting how EPIC model programs can partner with transit agencies. And I think they'll have some EPIC-N representation in the end, but it's a great series to learn about what their engineering school and a couple other departments at Montana State are doing with transportation agencies. And another big announcement, I guess, we haven't really done too much publication about it, but there's been a lot of work behind the scenes with some of our board and some other entities that we've been partnering with, START International and the UN Global Adaptation Network are partnering with us, and I think the Japanese Ministry of Environment to put on an EPIC Asia virtual training, similar to kind of our trainings we've done alongside other conferences where we share about what the EPIC model is and how you run it. And it's an application process to attend. They're looking for Asian municipalities and university partnership pairs to attend. And so if you have contacts or colleagues that are in Asia, Southeast Asia region specifically, I think is what they're looking for, have them apply. And our next EPIC Network call will be on November 5th, and we'll announce the theme for that. I know many of you have RSVP'd through the year, so it's not so much of a reminder I need to give anymore, but it's there. And then every month I'm going to start putting in links to just random resources just to help build that context, and maybe I'll start sharing links to community of practice outcomes, like forum spaces in the EPIC member commons. Maybe I'll start putting those in there instead to help drive that conversation about what we have available and what the community of practice groups are actually building. And that's it. Down below in the document, there's an appendix to some of the survey results. If you have questions about that, you can always email me to get the full data set, or most of the data set. I'll save some of the metadata from you, but anyway, please email me if you have questions about any of this, and thank you so much for attending. We've got 2 minutes if you have other questions. Feel free to ask. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. Thank you everyone for attending the October EPIC Network call.